Welcome to Change Your Story, Change Your Life. I'm your host, Mitch Austin, and we are broadcasting live from Unity Village. So excited to be here with the ANTN retreat and my special guest, who I'm going to introduce in a moment. So glad you could join us today on the show, where I have a guest come and talk about the defining moments of their life and the lesson or blessing that they got from it, in sharing the inspiration, the love, and hope of our life journey. This show is born out of a class I teach called Rise and Speak. And what I was noticing is I was working with students and they were doing a look back of their lives and then reframing those stories. People were getting healed. They were actually changing their story and changing their life. And so I'm so glad that you could join us here today. I have a class coming up this month called Metaphysical Parables on Tuesday, October 10th, and it's going to be at 5:30 Pacific Standard Time. And if you're interested in joining me for that class, where you're going to see a link to register down below. And I just love unpacking all of the metaphysical food that's in the stories of the Bible. And so if you don't have a good relationship with the Bible, or you don't understand that there's a code and that all the things in the Bible mean things, and you want to learn more or just heal your relationship with the Bible, this is an excellent class. So I hope you can join us. So let me get to our guest. I am so excited to have ministerial intern Kathi Wilson with us today, who's also at the conference. And a little bit about Kathi. Her first church was the Agape Center in LA with Reverend Dr. Beckwith. That's what began her spiritual journey into New Thought. And then in 2005, she found her way to the Creative Living Fellowship Center, and she said it felt like coming home. In 2008, she graduated as a practitioner through the Emerson Institute. And now she serves at the Amani Center in Cameron Park, California, as a practitioner and ministerial intern. And she says that it is her intention to plant seeds of hope and inspiration. And Kathi says she doesn't have any clear idea of what she'll be doing after she becomes a minister, but she knows whatever it will be amazing. So welcome to the show, Kathi. So glad you could be with us today.
Thank you, Mitch. It's such a privilege to be here.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, where do you hail from?
Well, I was born in Denver, Colorado. I have lived in California for most of my life, taking a little break and moving back to Colorado in my adulthood, and was actually a practitioner at a Colorado church in Fort Collins.
Wow, I didn't know that. Awesome.
Yeah.
Wow, quite a journey.
So I've been kind of bouncing around, and it's just been the last 8 years that I've been in the same place for any length of time.
Well, awesome. And you know, I met you, Kathi, at the Amani Center.
Yes.
When you took the Rise and Speak course.
Mm-hmm.
And the journey that you've been on, I feel like you've lived 6 lives in one life. I don't know how you feel, but that's what it seems like when I learned about your story and how inspiring the path that you've been on has been. And I'm just so grateful that you said yes to coming on to the show today. And so, Kathi, I want to ask you, if your life story was a book, what would the title be?
Yes, you can.
Yes, you can.
Yes.
Tell me more, what's behind that title? Now, I know you had like 22 surgeries,
Mm-hmm.
right? Is that how many you had?
Right.
Oh my goodness. So can you
And a near-death experience.
Really?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
At 8 years old.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
I died on the operating table.
Did you see anything when you?
Mm-hmm. And I was told that it wasn't time for me yet, and that I had to come back. And I didn't want to come back. I was screaming and crying and going, no, no, no. However, I did come back.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad you came back.
Me
because
too.
you've clearly done a lot of amazing work on the planet. But let's start a little bit about, because the way you came into the world was unique. You have a medical condition that limits your mobility. Could you tell us a little more about that story?
Certainly. I was born with a congenital hip dislocation in 1949. Medical science hadn't quite caught up yet, so I was treated as a polio baby, even though I didn't have polio. But they didn't know that until later on. At 18 months old, a very wise orthopedic said, "This child does not have polio. She has something goofy with her hips." He didn't use the word goofy. That's my word. But, and that began a very long, complicated story of how to fix me so that I could walk. Because I did not develop as a normal child, and instead of walking at the appropriate age, I was still dragging my left side and using pieces of furniture to scoot around with. See, even then, I kind of wanted to move, wanted to go and do things.
Right.
Even though this vessel wasn't quite ready for that.
And so this goofiness with your hip actually has a name, correct?
Hip dislocation. It's called dysplasia.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the medical name.
Okay.
Hip dysplasia.
Okay.
And basically what that means is that in the embryo process of growing, instead of your hip and socket being like that, my hip was like this.
Oh my goodness. It was on the other side.
It was on top of the shelf. Half of the shelf was missing.
Wow.
So at 18 months old, they started the long process of rotating that bone, that femoral head down into the shelf and rebuilding the shelf.
Wow. And that also caused some developmental, because your legs are not equal lengths. Right?
No, yeah. I was born with a 2.5-inch leg discrepancy.
Wow. And your family had a really odd reaction to your situation, as I recall. They weren't exactly compassionate about it.
My dear birth mom actually went into postpartum depression and felt extremely guilty that she had done something wrong. And my father, who was in the Navy at the time, didn't know how to help my mom and didn't have a clue on what I needed. And so the three of us kind of tilted along in life. And at 4, when I was 4, my mother gave me up, saying that she didn't want to and couldn't manage me, my sister, my dad being in the Navy, and having a disabled child. It was just all too much for her, and she suffered greatly from depression. So my dad, and this is in the 50s, unheard of in that day, my dad was able to get total custody of me.
Wow.
I was put on an airplane and flown to where he was stationed in San Francisco, California.
Wow.
And that's how I got to California.
That's how you got to California. But your dad wasn't terribly elegant with you, as I recall, and that there was some self-judgment or beliefs that you started to internalize.
I think the biggest belief, Mitch, that I internalized very young was that somehow I was a mistake. That I shouldn't have been born. I didn't have the right to breathe air or even live. And Mom giving me up and keeping my sister, but giving me up. At 4 years old, I couldn't understand the gift that she actually was giving me. But I internalized it as I'm a mistake, and I shouldn't be here.
And then you kind of lived out of that belief system for a long time, and
I
it
did.
led you down some really difficult roads, as I recall.
Yes, it did. And it eventually led me to such low self-esteem that my acting out became just outrageous. And honestly, looking back on it, I had a death wish, definitely. And that was kind of motivated me. So the relationships I got into were dangerous. They were always with really bad boys. Then I got into street drugs. Then I started drinking. My first overdose was at 16.
Oh my God.
So I really hated myself and really did not believe that I was meant to be alive. Yeah.
What a dark night.
It was.
And what was the turning point? Like, what was that moment, that defining moment, where a different story emerged?
supportive.
Right.
And they weren't supportive of me getting clean either.
Really? Wow. Yeah, so we're going to take a break. Don't go anywhere because we got more of this amazing journey that Kathi's going to share with us of love, hope, and inspiration. And I just want to give shout out to Wayne Baldwin. Thank you for joining the show. Shay Bird and Stacy Crumpet and Mama G. So glad you're here. Don't go away. We'll be back on New Thought Media Network. Change your story, change your life. I'm your host, Mitch Austin. I'm here with my guest today, ministerial intern Kathi Wilson. And I know that we got cut off just a little bit ago, so we're going to rewind the story a little bit. So there you were, Kathi, your friend's breaking down the door. You had just attempted suicide with drugs and alcohol. And what did he do?
He threw me in the shower, cleaned me up, and told me that we were going to go to a meeting. Didn't have a clue what a meeting was or how that would help, but I went. And I can't tell you a whole lot about those first 3 months. I was the girl in the corner, throwing up all the time, being sick a lot. And one day, this wonderful woman, this Mexican lady, older woman just got down on the floor with me, and she said, "You were loved." And I just came right up off the floor and said, "No, I'm not. I don't deserve to even be alive." And she just threw, and she was a bigger lady, and she just threw her arms around me and held me, and I sobbed, and I sobbed. And I don't think there's been many times since that I've ever sobbed that way, because it was all the way down in my soul.
It sounds like you heard her. You actually heard it for the first time.
I think I don't know that I heard her. My brain was so scrambled. I couldn't talk. My brain was so scrambled. I had lost the ability to talk in complete sentences. And it was like I was a young child relearning the art of communication. So I'm not sure that I heard what I felt, Mitch. I felt warm, and I would describe it today is I felt loved. And sobbing gave me some soul pain relief. So,
and she became your sponsor?
And she became my Narcotics Anonymous sponsor for about 8 years.
Wow.
And I did a lot of work. And I did some outside therapy as well.
Yeah. And now you're a drug and alcohol, or you were?
I got certified as a drug and alcohol counselor at 10 years, clean and sober, and worked in-house patients, 30-day recovery programs in-house, not hospital.
Right.
And started as a house mom and worked my way up to being program manager for a 90-day women's program and 1-year satellite program, and worked at integrating families, bringing kids back that the courts had taken away.
And I'm guessing you were a sponsor for a few people.
Just a few.
I bet. And what a full circle journey to have gone from barely being able to make sentences, having been so addicted and impacted, to then rising up and being a counselor and a sponsor. And I just want to recognize you and honor you for that. And I can see how your title would be Yes, I Can, because my God, to come from that, but that's not the only place in your life that you've overcome. I mean, you've had, 22 surgeries on your hip, and some of them pretty dicey. I remember there was one surgery that you had that you weren't sure if you were going to have it, I think.
Yeah. I wasn't sure. Again, I had kind of dipped into just not confident. I had lost my confidence in my ability to make good decisions medically, because the hip before had failed. And as a result of that, when they talked about doing it again 18 months later, I thought, but that intuition, that spark of life that today I call God, today I call it Yes, I Can.
Right.
Told me to go ahead and do it, and I did. And I participated in a fundraiser for arthritis research, and my orthopedic doctor was part of that group, doing that fundraiser.
Right.
And it was a walk. And I was recovering from a very intense hip surgery, and I was, again, the ever-ready bunny of the ortho group. I wanted to be there, and I was. At 8 months recovering from surgery, and it was 3 to 5 mile walk, and I just didn't know if I could do it.
Right.
On one hand, but on the other hand, yes, I can.
Yes, I can.
Yes, I can. And I took a friend along with me to help me so that when I got overly fatigued or the pain got really kind of outrageous, I could lean on her. And I actually made it to the 3 mile mark. And my orthopedic surgeon was there at the gate, the finish line, and he's with tears in his eyes. This is an orthopedic surgeon, German, very standoffish, horrible bedside manner. Bless his heart. With tears in his eyes, he hugged me. And he said, "You're my little champion."
Oh, 3 miles. I just can't even imagine, Kathi, that kind of resolve to do that.
Sorry.
I have a little bit of tea.
Oh,
yeah.
No cooties, I promise.
No cooties. Well, me neither. No cooties.
Good.
So, Kathi, when your hip failed, were you in a wheelchair at that point, or what was how were you getting around?
I was getting around with any way I could, whether it was a wheelchair or a walker, or 2 crutches. But mind you, I had no joint in that whole area.
When you walked the 3 miles, you had no joint?
No.
When it failed?
When it failed, they had to pull the hip out, and that left an empty space.
Oh my gosh.
And so I was walking on pure muscle.
Oh my God.
And so I wasn't real mobile, is my point.
Well, you have no hip socket and you're walking around. I don't even know how you do that, but okay.
I kind of, I wasn't out dancing, that's for sure.
No dancing for you, huh? Oh my gosh. And I want to welcome Heather. So glad you joined us. So Kathi, you are now, how old are you now?
I'm 74.
And you drive?
I drive.
You volunteer?
I have a volunteer job of about 15 hours a week, with a 501c for kiddies, nonprofit for kiddies. And I'm involved in coaching.
Yes.
I have some coaching clients.
Excellent.
And
you use the hand braces to get around.
And I use the Canadian crutches to walk with.
Yeah. Wow. So my question is to you, Kathi, what would you want mobile people to know about people with mobility challenges or barriers? What do you want us to know?
I would like you all to know on a really heartfelt level that just because our bodies look funny or disabled or is in a wheelchair or on crutches, we're no different than you. There is no difference. That heart to heart, soul to soul, we are all one. And if you see a disabled person out in public, please, please help them with the door. Ask them first. Some disabled people want to just be really independent.
Right.
But sometimes that independence hurts them. So be sensitive.
Yeah.
Be aware.
Yeah.
Because you don't see a whole lot of us out there in public. Think about it. Think about the last time you walked down a major street in any city. How many wheelchairs did you see? How many people my age on crutches
Right.
did you see?
No.
We're almost invisible.
Wow.
So be respectful. We are all the same.
And when we were talking about this, Kathi, you made a powerful statement about what this journey has taught you about your body. Can you share that with our audience?
Certainly. Having had chronic pain since the age of 42, I got very busy with my education, learned a lot about the body's way of functioning and how chronic pain affects the neurons and your thinking and your feelings and all of those things. And somewhere along the line, I sort of got stuck in thinking that I was my body, that that's all there was to me.
Right.
Was this body, and it was all funked out and, didn't work all the time. And I came to religious science, and I heard way back when, I think it was Reverend Michelle in Arizona, looked at me one day and said, "But you're more than your body." And really? Well, if I'm more than my body, what am I? And she laughed at me. She says, "Kathi, you know what you are. Your humor, your personality, your consciousness, your giving, your loving." She rattled off all these things, and I thought, okay. And then later on in my studies, I got this aha moment. And the aha moment was that this body is nothing more than a temple. And this temple has to be loved and cared for and nourished to allow that spirit, that God that is in all of us to work. See, if you're only focused on one aspect, you're missing the bigger picture. And the bigger picture is God's energy and love and compassion and healing flows through all of us. And our temple is the way that happens.
I love that. I love that. So much more than our body, but it's a temple.
It's a temple.
For us to live our purpose out through. Oh, I just love that. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing. That's beautiful. So, how did you find your way to the Agape Center? What happened? What twist or turn or synchronistic moment unfolded for you?
Okay. Yeah, that was...
Because you didn't believe in God, right?
No. No. Although I was I went to Sunday school as a kid and all that, but my parents wouldn't go to church. So my brother and I went. But even then, I was like, nah. Nah.
I mean, did you ever blame God for your situation or how you came into the world?
I don't remember blame, Mitch. What I remember is, why me? Why me? And fortunately, all of that's been healed and it's very much way back in my past. But I remember, especially as I was using and drinking, I'd get higher than a kite on cocaine and drink 18 vodka talls.
Oh, jeez.
And I'd sit there and go, why me? But getting back to the...
Well, I have a question. Did you ever answer that question for yourself?
Well, it spiraled me back to, I don't deserve to be alive. And I'm a mistake. See the spiral?
But do you see purpose now in the look back? I mean,
in the look back.
Are you telling yourself? Are you telling yourself a new story now?
Oh,
versus one.
absolutely.
And what is that?
The new story is that God, Spirit, Allah, whatever you call it, that energy and that love and that healing is within all of us. And God is everywhere in everything. So what that means to me is God is in my disability. God is in my death experience at 8 years old. God is in the chronic pain and the conditions of my intestines and all of the medical problems I have. God is there.
Housekeeping.
And it is
Community service today?
No, I'm okay. Thank you.
it's fabulous that I have that God consciousness that understands that even God wants to experience.
You know, in the class, I'm so glad you're talking about this, because in the class, you made this profound statement. I still remember it like clear as day. You had announced in the class that you were thankful for your pain. Can you tell us more about that?
I am grateful for the lessons and the people that I was exposed to as a result of being in chronic pain. Because thinking back on the timeline, I'd been in chronic pain for a while, a long while. And the problem with chronic pain is it interferes with your brain mechanism after a while. You know, it affects your neurons and all that stuff. And yet, there were so many gifts that were birthed from that chronic pain. As an example, I got to go to an orthopedic ward where people were pretty much given up. And I got to talk to them. I got to share with them where I'd come from.
Yes.
And where I was.
Yes.
And in Narcotics Anonymous, I did a Narcotics Anonymous 12-step meeting at the VA hospital for 3 years. And I would go and share my story, which not only was about my addiction, but it was also my medical history story to men who were coming back in pieces from the wars. And I would hold their hands, and when they cried, I would hug them. And here I was, you know, this little 40-year-old trying to figure out life and get clean, and I was in this VA hospital with these guys, and I just started praying. I just started talking and loving and seeing the similarities rather than the differences.
Oh, I love that. I love that.
And, you know, to this day, I remember some of those faces when I close my eyes.
Thank you, Kathi. Thank you. So beautiful. Thank you. Don't go away. We're going to take another commercial break, and we're going to have more of Kathi, more of her stories, more of her journey. Don't go anywhere. Come back right here to New Thought Media Network. We'll see you in just a quick bit.
Let's do something fun. Let's go on vacation. Let's take some time off just to do something fun with none of the usual to-do list that we have to deal with from day to day. And let's do it right now. And it'll only take a few seconds. Take a deep breath. Let it out. Take a break. Give yourself the gift of a moment. Allow yourself to stop doing and simply be. Because you are a bright light of love, and for you, being is more than enough.
Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors, including the Hepperlin Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Spiritual Center, Kitchener, Om Center for Spiritual Living, La Mesa, Satya Center, Center for Spiritual Living, North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, and Center for Spiritual Living, Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. Thank you for making New Thought Media Network a place to be. Please come be you. And remember, like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring.
Your life. Welcome back to Change Your Story, Change Your Life. I'm your host, Mitch Austin, and I'm here with ministerial intern Kathi Wilson. And if you've been watching or if you just tuned in, you're going to want to watch the other half of this show. Just incredible stuff, Kathi. I mean, the journey you've been on with your disability, with addiction. How many years do you have clean now?
33.
33 years clean, working with vets that have come back in pieces and giving them hugs and hope and inspiration, dealing with chronic pain, now serving as a practitioner and becoming a ministerial intern. Just the Yes I Can makes so much sense for your book title completely. Are you in pain still?
Yes. It's not chronic.
Right.
As an example, this weather,
Mm-hmm.
the hot and cold,
Yeah.
and the high humidity and low humidity is causing some joint pain.
Yeah.
So I'm a little slower today,
Right.
but I'm okay with it.
Like, look, you're smiling, you're glowing. Like, what can you offer people who are struggling with chronic pain? Like, what inspiration or hope or even inspired advice could you give?
I have learned along the way that chronic pain is nothing to be ashamed of.
Mm.
And a lot of people that have chronic conditions have a shame element to it. So I, Kathi, am giving you permission to let it go.
Mm.
There is no shame.
Mm.
The other thing I suggest to my clients that I work with is to get a support system.
Mm.
Because truly, especially people who haven't been there, haven't walked in those moccasins, have a belief that you're a complainer because you're complaining about being in pain.
Mm-hmm.
But those of us who have chronic pain, we know better, don't we? It's more than that. So get a support system. Get a person that you trust,
Mm-hmm.
that you can share your inner thoughts and feelings with,
Mm-hmm.
and share it with them so that you aren't labeled as a complainer. in your relationship or your job or your motherhood, fatherhood, whatever.
Yes.
There's got to be a person in your life.
Right, to let it out.
To let it out, process it, and then let it go.
Ooh, I love that. I love that. You know, it's interesting because we're in a New Thought teaching that believes, you know, that our thoughts are things and that they outpicture. Do you ever get a little bit of spiritual judgment in our movement? Like,
I had a lot of spiritual judgment when I first came to religious science, because what I heard first was, you created everything in your life. And that so triggered me, I thought, you and the donkey you rode in on. Okay? But I stuck around.
Yeah.
And I stuck around. And I stuck around. And I talked with ministers. And I talked with other people in the congregation. And I talked to Dr. Michael Beckwith many times about
why?
Not why, but how.
How
did I create this condition in the womb? How did I do that?
What was Michael's response?
Because I would run around and market it so that mothers to be could take it so their babies wouldn't be born like me.
Were you really thinking that?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Wow.
Michael was one of those people, and Reverend Michelle was one of those people too, that helped me greatly in the idea that God is all good, life is all good, and so are you. And so on a good day, I can embrace that and be happy with it and joyful and bloody. On a pain day, it's more challenging. I don't know if I answered your question.
Well, I think that I guess my question was more like, did you get a satisfying answer to the how from either Reverend Michelle or Reverend Dr. Beckwith?
Oh, I did not from them.
Right.
I came up with my own.
What'd you come up with, almost Reverend Kathi?
That God is everywhere. So God is in the disease. God is in the disability. God is in the mental health. God is in the bad, yucky, shadow self side. God is everywhere. And if you truly, truly embrace that, there's no bad, is there?
Because when you embrace it, Kathi, have you been able to see like the gift or the lesson? Because that's what I think. I think everything in our life, if we can get that higher view, is either a lesson or a blessing. And is that something
And I think lessons are blessings too.
There you go.
I do. I do. And I also believe, Mitch, as you probably remember about me, is that we are all here as individualized expressions to do a job. A lot of people are a little maybe confused about what that job is.
Right.
Personally, I believe we're all here to love one another and support each other. Period.
We come here for each other.
And in order to love one another and to support each other, you must love yourself.
And is that where you've gotten to?
And that's where I am today.
Wow. Well, if you can, we all can. That I do know.
Absolutely.
So I have my signature question that I want to ask.
Okay.
So somebody comes to you with the book of life and they want to put one of your life stories in there for future generations for their inspiration and guidance, what life story would you provide and why?
The one I just gave you, that God is, Spirit Source is in everything.
And when did you wake up to that? What point or what
4
story?
years ago,
And what was going on
on a
that moment?
Tuesday,
And what
in the afternoon, on my patio.
and what were you journaling? Were you praying? How did that come?
I was sitting there watching my animals.
Mm. And then it just came to you. All
It came to me,
Wow.
and I cried,
Oh.
but not unhappy. I cried relief. I cried experience and joy and excitement. Oh, that's it. That's it.
Mm.
You know, I hear from people, I don't know why I got cancer. I don't often say it, but I think it. Why not? Why not?
Mm. Mm.
We're all in this together,
We're all in this together.
and God is everywhere,
And God is everywhere.
in everything,
In everything.
flows in and out and through.
What beautiful surrender to things that we don't want to look at and we don't want to embrace. But when we do, there's the gift.
And that's my message.
Oh, Kathi, thank you so much. Thank you so much. So blessed. How can people get in touch with you, Kathi?
I have a wonderful email, loveinaction256@gmail.com.
And I think we're dropping that link as well. And I do want to point out, we have these little hearts on, and we had a very special speaker, Nemo Patel, who works at an ashram, Gandhi's ashram, with children in India who are poor. And these little hearts were made out of scrap material at Gandhi's ashram by people learning to sew. It's part of their sewing work program. And Nemo brought these for us to wear. And I just wanted to point this out, how grateful I am to Nemo Patel. And he's going to be a future guest as well. So, so I'm so grateful to New Thought Media Network, who is producing this show, and to Kathi again for coming on and being so vulnerable and open. Thank you, because that's where the good stuff is when we can tell our stories authentically and vulnerably from these places where we allow ourselves to be seen, because that's where the healing is. That's where the good stories are. And when we share them, we all grow in hope and inspiration. So I hope that you'll catch my show next week again, 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And in the meantime, continue to show up and share your story. You never know whose life you might touch or change.